Hello, America. How you doing today? Hopefully, all our fellow veterans out there are having a good day, and you had a fantastic Thanksgiving. And yeah, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Since we did not have an episode last Wednesday, since it was right before the holiday, and of course, our co-host Kevin Hensley is with us. How you doing today, Kevin?
I'm doing great. How are you? Especially since
Ah,
Saturday there was a big win for the state of Michigan. Go blue!
oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. You
yeah,
guys played a good game. All right,
yeah. So
but guys kept it classy when we lost, though.
yeah,
So we gave you guys the props you deserved.
so
And I see. Wait a minute, my video isn't working
yeah. I was gonna
either.
say I haven't seen you. There you are.
Aha!
There you are.
There we go. I just didn't want everybody to see my ugly mutt. Okay. And February 18th was a good day. The Cavaliers had their salute to service, and they honored some fallen heroes, and one of those heroes is going to be our dedication today. So let me just bring him up. It is Private Heath Warner from Canton, Ohio. He graduated from McKinley Senior High School, and I have to mention that because they're a football powerhouse here in Ohio. And he graduated in 2005. He was in the Marines, and he deployed to Iraq with the 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marine Regiment, 3rd Marine Division, 3rd Marine Expeditionary Force on September 11th of 2006. And then, unfortunately, on November 22nd in the same year, his vehicle was struck by a roadside bomb, and unfortunately, Heath did not make it. So today's dedication is to Heath and his family. And I hope his
Cheers.
family's able to um, deal with everyday life now, because I know traumatic loss like this takes everything out of a family. So, and also don't forget, in Rootstown, Texas, every first, what is it? First, let me bring that up here real quick. Haircuts for Heroes down there at the Warrior Support Center for Burn Pits 360. And it is every first Monday, I think it is. And they ask for some sort of donation to go in and get your haircut. And they also have a Veterans Christmas wrapping event going on. I think they had that, yesterday.
I think so.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
What might be coming up? I can't remember.
Yeah, we'll double check on that. And remember, folks, we are live. The chat is up. So if you have any questions for our guest today, feel free to put it in the chat, and we'll get that question out to him. And today, Kevin, you want to go ahead and introduce our guest?
Yes. We've had the privilege of advocating for the Pact Act, and all these organizations that have come together. And this gentleman, Shane, from the DAV, has been an integral part of bridging the gap between veteran service organizations, walking the halls of the House and the Senate, really being an advocate and a go-getter when it comes to outlining veterans issues, not only just for the Pact Act, but just, mainly for our experience here. So it gives me a great honor and privilege to welcome Shane to the show. Shane, how you doing?
I am doing great, guys. Kevin, Tim, thank you for all your hard work over the last several years, too. Great to work with you on the Hill and also at our headquarters in Erlanger, and just really happy to be here with you.
Yes. We're happy to have you on. Matter of fact, we're quite honored to have you on. It was a pleasure working with you as well. And that's some facility you have down there in Erlanger, too. Now, to get things started, can you tell us what the DAV is?
Absolutely. DAV, Disabled American Veterans, was founded in 1920 by a group of World War veterans in Cincinnati, Ohio. It was actually Judge Marks, who was a judge there. He was wounded during World War I in France. When they came back, I know this is going to sound odd, veterans weren't getting what they were promised, right?
Yes, that's true.
So they banded together and started the Disabled American Veterans of the Great War. Our name has changed over the time. And in 1932, DAV received a congressional charter from Congress in reference to what the organization does. We have, what DAV does is really vast. Everything from providing assistance with veterans with their claims free of charge. Obviously, we have service officers or benefits advocates around the nation at every VA regional office. Plus, we also get very much involved in volunteering, as well as DAV donates vans to VA medical centers around the country, provide volunteer riders or drivers, so that veterans that have medical appointments can get a free ride to and from the VA facility, because there are many who are unable to drive or can't drive. So DAV has been providing those. We also have a charitable service trust where we provide grants for other organizations and other veteran related needs that DAV doesn't provide for. So the organization is vast. We've been in this business for a very long time, over 100 years now. And I'm coming up on 25 years of being with DAV myself. So it's been a great ride. I love what we do.
All right. And I want to thank you for describing some of the services that you do provide for veterans, because I know right here in Northeast Ohio, there are a lot of veterans that require those free rides to and from the VA clinics. So I do appreciate that. And now, what is your role with the DAV?
Currently, I am the DAV Deputy Legislative Director at our headquarters here in Washington, D.C. I've been on our legislative staff now for a little over 5 years. Before that, I was on our service staff for a year. Before that, I was actually one of our service officers around the country. I was at 5 different VA regional offices, providing one-on-one assistance with veterans and their claims. And I spent 5 years at our office at the Board of Veterans Appeals, providing veterans representation there in hearings and in written form in front of veterans law judges. So have a lot of experience, which has led me to my current position on the legislative team.
And we learned quite a bit about legislation as far as Kevin and I go, about legislation and how it gets done while we were advocating. And what is one of the most memorable aspects of advocating for the Pact Act that you can remember?
That really is a difficult question, because a bunch of us VSOs recently that were working together did like a little after action, and it was just so amazing to me how many times somebody would bring something up that you kind of forgot about because everything was so busy and you're moving so fast and so much going on.
Yes.
I think for me, two of them, well, there were a couple. One, joining in with Burn Pits 360, as well as the other VSOs when we were up on the Hill early last year, or early this year. I want to say like February, March. So before everything was really going, that was an awful lot of fun being involved and engaged. One of the other ones probably for me is testifying at the hearing in the Senate. There were only 2 VSOs that were asked to testify. DAV was one. So that was a great moment. And I think the other one was there were so many behind the scenes meetings that we had with a lot of the policymakers that we were having on several issues. And there was one of those meetings where we fought extremely hard for something, and I didn't think we were going to get it. End result is it stayed in the bill. So those were some of my better memories during that time. It was busy. It seems like there was a meeting or an event or a speaking engagement or something on the Hill all the time. This year just blurred by. So many good events, so many things we participated in. I got to be honest, part of me is still surprised it got passed.
Yeah, me too. How about you, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm it's still August 10th. It's still a a 4 month mentioned date right there. I look at that bill. I got a copy of the signing every once in a while, and I took it to an event at the beginning of November, and you just look at that and it says approved on there, and it just it just like, and then it goes backwards, because of all the stuff it took to get there, and you see that approved, and you're like, wow, that little signature for all that work that we did for that approval is doesn't do that paper justice, so but it's great. It's great nonetheless, and meeting these people, and getting to go down to Erlanger, Kentucky there, and for the DAV sponsored event for the rally that we had down there in Kentucky, and being a part of all of this. And I think the biggest moment for me, Tim, and I'll steal this from you a little bit here, but
Mhm.
I think the biggest moment is seeing all these veteran service organizations and these nonprofits and all these people come together, and really just make it an instrumental impact. I think we had 60 plus or something like that. I think it was that came
Mhm.
together. And most of the times we can't agree on what color the sky is and what color the grass is at the time. But man, when we step forward into this and we put this together, look what we did. We moved mountains, and it was really great to see the veteran service organizations and the nonprofits, and nobody was bigger than anybody else, and nobody was, we all had a piece at the table, and it was great to see this thing come together like it did.
Now, Shane, you mentioned the Senate hearing on the bill, and that's the day I met you for the first time, and we had a nice little discussion. And one of the things I remember um, you talking about was the lack of Gulf War veterans that were getting involved with advocating for this bill. Because I don't know if you remember, but when Senator Sherrod Brown from Ohio started his questioning of the secretary, he had mentioned me and stated that I was a Gulf War veteran. And afterwards, when we were down at our press conference, Senator Tester came up to me, and he talked to me for a little bit. And then I remember when we went back to walk the halls, I think it was about 3 weeks later, when we're outside at the press conference, and then Tester and Moran both walked up to me and said, "Thank you for helping us remember the Gulf War," and we got it back in the bill. Because if you remember, the Senate version of the bill that they passed unanimously was only for post 9/11 veterans only. And I just want to thank you for recognizing the fact that us Gulf War veterans weren't getting any love at first. So I want to thank you for that.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. This actually goes back probably about 2 or 3 years ago. The early beginnings of some of this legislation in the House was starting to move, and they were making it specific for post 9/11 veterans. And we have known that burn pits have been an issue much before that, especially during the first Persian Gulf.
Yes.
And we encouraged this office that was introducing a bill to include Gulf War veterans, and they weren't being overly friendly with the idea, and it didn't seem like they really wanted to get on board with it. And so, of course, when it comes down for their ass, so will you support our bill? And I said, absolutely not. DAV will not support your bill until you include Persian Gulf veterans. I've given you all the information, all the evidence showing there was exposures. We're not going to get on board until you include them. Period. The end. I think it was about 2 weeks later, she asked for another meeting, showed me the new version of the bill, and it did include Persian Gulf veterans. So it was very important to us as an organization, as DAV, because we're hearing from a lot of our members, as well as our research, as well, a lot of our people on our staff, even here in DEC, are Persian Gulf vets who were exposed. So it's very important to us to make sure we didn't leave that group behind, because sometimes everybody gets an idea and runs with it without stopping to think it through.
That's true. That's true. And I think that's what Moran and Tester did at first when they had their bill passed through the Senate. Is they didn't think enough when they wrote the bill, because actually that bill really wasn't helping any veterans. It was giving post 9/11 veterans an extra 5 years to file claims. But as far as this exposure goes with the Pact Act, there's really no, it kind of wipes that time frame out. So I don't know what they were thinking at first. Maybe they were just trying to push something through to make us happy, make us go away. But I think when I started talking with Tester's staff, they realized we weren't going away. And the way I got involved is I got to give some props to a certain individual right here. Kevin, I don't know. I don't think you know this story, Shane. Kevin, our co-host, Kevin Hensley here. I guess he noticed a post of mine on Facebook. Was it, Kevin?
Mm-hmm.
That I had just gotten my service connection, and it took me 25 years to get that. And Shane, I know you know that because that was part of my speech down there in Kentucky. And Kevin saw my post on Facebook, and he messages me. He only says basically 3 things in his message. And it was, call me. This will change your life. And then he sends his phone number. That's all he said. So my wife says, yeah, go ahead and give him a call. And Kevin, you want to go ahead and tell the story from there?
Yeah. I saw a post that he had, and the struggles that he had for the last 20 plus years of finally getting his compensation. And, that in itself, being a representative of the VFW, American Legion, the DAV, and, because I call myself a mutt, and it's kind of unheard of at these times to be able to wait that long for benefits. That's ridiculous. But I called him up, or I asked him to call me. He gives me a call. I said, this will change your life. And the next thing I know, Tim's over there. We're walking the halls, and we're hitching rides together, and we're going down the advocacy road, and the next thing you know, we're all over the place now. So, but my question to you, Shane, is, now that the Pact Act is passed, and we've seen these veteran service organizations come together, is this the future of veteran advocacy as we move forward for legislation down the road, as we continue on? Do you see this being the way forward about coming together and banding together on these certain? I know the DAV might have a little bit of a different legislative agenda than the VFW or the American Legion or whatever, but do you see this being, because what I saw was, when we talked to the legislators, I saw their ears bend a lot more when we said DAV, American Legion, IAVA, whatever service organization that you want to talk to, are all on board supporting this. Do you see this as the future way of legislation moving forward on key aspects of legislation for the 118th Congress and beyond, the way we did the Pact Act?
First of all, I don't think we've ever seen anything like we saw before on the Pact Act when it came to the whole community coming together as a whole. There were a few times that were kind of close. Blue Water Navy, there was some of that coming together. The Mission Act, there was some of that post 9/11 GI Bill. But on the level that we saw during the Pact Act, which, as you already noted, Tim or Kevin, over 60 VSOs, I don't know that that's a future. I will say this much. We hope it is. A lot, as I was mentioning, a lot of the VSOs, we met a month or so ago doing an after going through things. And I know all of us were noticing kind of the same thing. When there was a push from everybody, that's when things were really getting noticed. A lot of activity was being picked up. So yeah, I hope that is the future. But also, as you noted, all of the VSOs have different missions, different legislative agendas. So not all of us are always going to be on the same page on every issue. It just turned out that on toxic exposures and burn pits, that really was a huge issue for everybody. So it was very easy for us to all get on board and work together in a way that I believe you guys mentioned, that there really was nobody above the other or leading or throwing their weight around. And we've talked about this quite a bit internally. This really was a communal process, and it was a wonderful part to be involved with so many advocates and VSOs. I hope that's the future. Realistically, in the past, you guys know we had 60 VSO sign on that letter, over 60. In the past, if we got over 10, we were excited.
Right.
So I want to say we hope that is, but realistically, I don't know it's going to be that way on every issue. And it's really going to be issue specific, because there are some issues that DAV probably don't have as a priority. And the same can be said with VFW, American Legion, Wounded Warrior Project, PVA, MOA, the list goes on and on. Not everybody's going to align together, but I do know this. We've already discussed that when we do align together, we want to work just like we did on the Pact Act.
That's awesome. That's great.
Now, I've been doing some roundtables with Senator Sherrod Brown here in Ohio concerning the Pact Act. One of the things that I'm noticing is, well, he's inviting all the VSOs in whatever town the roundtable is at that time. Like yesterday, it was in Akron, Ohio. So he invited all the VSOs from Akron to come, and for once they all came. And I'm in complete shock to hear that a lot of these people never even heard of the Pact Act until they are invited to these roundtables. These are veterans affected by this, and they didn't even know that this law existed. Are you finding the same thing with you, Shane, when you get new veterans coming in to sign up with the DAV? Are they saying that they haven't heard of the Pact Act either?
Well, yes. When you're talking about is everybody aware of it? Absolutely not. Is every Vietnam veteran in this country aware of eligibility for benefits related to Agent Orange? No. We're still seeing them file claims and benefits for the first time. So, Tim, what you're really bringing up is a huge part in the veterans world, and that is awareness and outreach. DAV has published several articles in a lot of our magazines since it passed. We have several sites on our website to go to. Our service officers around the country are spreading the word. You're still going to get those veterans who, one, may not think they're a veteran, right? Mm-hmm. Not everybody identifies as such, or identifies with being exposed to something. They were there, but they don't automatically think that way. Right. So I think this is going to be an ongoing problem. And actually, there's going to be an upcoming hearing in the House Veterans Affairs Committee on December 7th at 10 a.m. And they're going to be talking about implementation of the Pact Act. One of the things we've been talking about in preparing for this is outreach. How do you find a way to get more people aware? VA's done a fairly good job of getting it out since it passed, but you're always going to run into groups, especially when you get into more rural or smaller communities. If veterans don't have a connection with another VSO, if they're not getting magazines and updates, or if they don't have a lot of friends in the veteran culture, it's going to take a while for all of this to permeate through the veteran community. It just is.
Now, I know in October there were 113,000 claims filed. Would you happen to know an updated number?
Last number I heard was a week or so ago, and it was over 136,000. So it's probably safe to say they're closing in on 140,000 and higher.
Yeah, they just came out with something saying 160,000 plus claims have been filed now. So since the month of October. So that's what I heard, and I don't know if you've heard something similar to that or not, but it's going up, and I'm actually pretty happy about the way it's gone. So,
Well, the way I look at it is this bill affects roughly 5 million veterans, 3.5 million Iraqi and Afghanistan veterans alone. So with just 160,000 filed already, to me, I think that number's low compared to how many people are actually affected by this bill. And I think one of the reasons is the word's just not getting out.
Well, I definitely think that that's a part of it, but I also think that sometimes there is an over projection of the amount of people who are going to file claims. I'll just give you a brief example. When we were working on the Blue Water Navy Act and getting that granted for Vietnam veterans, VA and CBO were projecting over 500,000 claims would be filed within the first few months. They've just recently broke 120. That was 3 years ago. So I think sometimes there is this over projection because sometimes, to your point, the word's not out to everybody. But then the other point is a lot of veterans may not even be aware they have a disability or they have an injury or they have something they can actually file a claim for if they're not engaged in medical care through the VA or privately. So that's going to be part of the slowdown too. I think what we're going to see is that level of claims can permeate throughout the next year. The first year of the Blue Water Navy Act, they had several, over 100,000 throughout that first year. This is even higher than that. So I think we're going to see the level of claims continue for probably, my guesstimation is going to be the next 6 to 8 months. And then it'll probably slow down after that because the majority of the veterans who are aware and have disabilities will have their claims established before August 10th, because if it's established within that first year, you go up.
Now, at the roundtable yesterday, there were 2 veterans that served in Iraq. Neither of them heard about the Pact Act until the senator's staff called them up and asked them, hey, can you participate with the roundtable on Monday? The one stated that, well, I'm not sick. Why should I even bother registering on the burn pit registry if I'm not sick? And what advice would you give these veterans that are saying that, so we can go ahead and get them registered on at least the burn pit registry and get them at least started in the VA system?
Well, the important thing to remember is the burn pit registry overall is not an end all be all when it comes to establishing claims or reporting illnesses. It's making sure that the government is aware of your exposure and any problems you may have if they come in the future. So that's why registries are important. It helps keep track of that information. So I think that is a big piece to get them involved. And the other part of that too is, as we were kind of noting a little bit before, if veterans don't think they're ill, they're not going to do anything about it. So that's why it becomes the greater VSO community, like what you guys are doing. You got to get the awareness out there. You got to let people know this isn't just about you, right?
Right.
This isn't just about Tim or Kevin or Shane. If it was, none of us would be doing what we're doing right now, right?
Right.
So I think it's finding that common denominator within our veteran culture, within our veterans groups, within our local communities, to make sure they help get this information out. It takes a family, takes a village, as they say. So we need everybody to act out, whether it impacts you or not. I'm not opposed 9/11 veteran, and I served after the first Persian Gulf War. So does this bill impact me directly? Absolutely not. Am I going to stop talking about this? Absolutely not. Right. So it's one of those things of, I think veterans, when they're not in this community, they are thinking just about themselves because they've got other things they're thinking about too, their family, healthcare, work, all of these other things that go along with it. So it's bringing us together as a community, which is really going to make the difference.
Right. Now, one of the things I also say when I ask them to sign up on the burn pit registry is even if they have an illness that's not on the presumptive list, if they register on the burn pit registry and they list all their illnesses, and the ones that aren't on the presumptive list, and they see it's a trend amongst veterans that this illness is running rapid, that it can help also get that illness put onto the burn pit registry, since this law does give the VA secretary the power to add illnesses.
So to that, yes and no. The National Academy of Sciences just released a report, I think 2 months ago, a month and a half ago, talking about how there needs to be some changes to the burn pit registry to make it more effective for veterans. And part of that is it's hard for them to use the burn pit registry specifically for causal links, saying, here's the exposures. But to your other point, whether you have a presumptive disease or not, it's immaterial. So you're absolutely right about that, because when the registry first started, there weren't any presumptives for this. So this is a great way for veterans to capture that information, to your point, that can help us find connections down the road to eventually get that disability related.
Now, I'll go ahead and turn this over to Kevin here. I know he's got questions as well.
So Shane, we talked about the idea of, getting on the burn pit registry and also fixing the burn pit registry, because as of right now, you can't, nobody can your family members, if you pass away, nobody can update your information on the burn pit registry. It's impossible to do. But, I hear a lot of people say, I'm not sick, I'm not, it took me 11 years, peeling back the onion from my exposure in Iraq in 2006, when they told me I just had exercise-induced asthma, when I found out, now I've got a terminal lung disease called constrictive bronchiolitis, which is on the 23 conditions now. So now my family will get the benefits that they are entitled to if I pass, because I still have the 6.5 year window to wait for the 10-year mark for the 100%, permanent and total. So that's a good thing. But what do you say to those people that say, well, I'm not sick right now, I'm fine, I don't want to get involved, or I don't want to do this, I don't want to, I don't want to rock the boat per se, or whatever? What would your advice be to somebody who says that to you?
Well, if somebody doesn't want to get involved, that's their choice, right?
Right.
How do you connect with them? How do you help them understand that this is much bigger? Now, not everybody is going to have an illness. That doesn't preclude you from registering. It does for a claim, but that's a little bit of a different situation. So I think what it really comes down to is getting them involved and engaged with the community, however that community is. Because the more veterans get together, the more times we band together, and the Pact Act, as you guys clearly indicated, is a huge show of what veterans can do when we are all doing it together. So trying to find a way to reach a veteran is one of the good ways, is what you just mentioned, Kevin, is, well, this isn't necessarily all about you. It could be about your family. Right. If you're not receiving benefits for some of your conditions that may be related, they won't get anything when you pass. So I think that's one way to do it. Another way is there's lots of other ancillary benefits that come along with this: dependents education assistance, DEA, or Chapter 35, which is an education program through the VA for dependents. So I think sometimes if we can't get through the stubborn veteran, I know it's hard to believe. Veterans are sometimes stubborn, don't listen to us, and they're only going to do what they want to do. I know it's crazy talk. Or,
Right.
My wife would point her finger at me all day long on that. But maybe finding a way to get them engaged on behalf of their family. So there's a lot of benefits that come about because of getting service connection that would be available for their family. So maybe that's one way. Hey, I know you're not concerned about yourself, but what about your family? Wouldn't you like to be able to help them get entitlement to some benefits even before you pass? So I think sometimes we got to find a way to connect with them outside of just, oh, no, I'm fine. Well, odds are you're not. So we got a minute. Let's sit and have a quick conversation. Now, not every veteran's going to have a disability. I have two uncles who both served in Vietnam. One did 3 tours and one did 1. Neither one of them have come down with any diseases related to Agent Orange. But how many hundreds of thousands of millions of other ones have you do we know are out there? So I think the awareness is the big thing. We can't force them to do anything. Just make sure they're aware. That's really the big piece of this. And like you guys were talking about outreach, that's why it's so imperative. VA and everybody is really banging the drum on the Pact Act. So there is an awareness level out there. So they're not waiting 20 years to establish a claim going, oh, I didn't know.
Right. And that's key. I mean, Senator Peters has come to Michigan a couple times, and he's coming back to Michigan in December, and we're having a kind of like a press conference / roundtable thing in December here in the Downriver area. And, it's nice to also hear from your politicians that are serving in that capacity to support this and see them coming back home and see them like Sherrod Brown's doing in Ohio and, Senator Peters is doing in Michigan and across the board. I just, my concern is that like when we were advocating, we had in Michigan alone, there's over 4,600 veterans who signed up on the registry, right? And that doesn't seem like a big number, but we have a National Guard base. We don't have those active duty bases like in Texas and Florida and California, where you have those large numbers of folks on the registry. But 4,600 is a pretty profound number in the state of Michigan, and of course Ohio is a little bit bigger because they have an active duty component base in Wright-Patterson. But trying to get those veterans just to advocate or to to help push the Pact Act or the Warfighter Bill at the time, and then it moved into the Pact Act or the 12 to 15 omnibus bills that we had at the time. It seemed like a huge challenge, and then now you revert it back to the awareness and the outreach and things of that nature. And I see a trend, and I don't know if you've seen this trend too, and I'd be interested to get your take on this, that that veterans might be still afraid of reprisal. They might be in fear of losing their jobs because they might say that they've been exposed to something, and they might have a fear of possibly losing their jobs. What is your take on that?
Well, that's a possibility. Veterans think that way. But I want to clear up right now. That's bullshit because that's not possible, right?
Right.
Your employer can't fire you if you say I was potentially exposed to something. They can't. It's just like there's this misnomer for federal employees that, oh, well, I can't file a disability claim because, they're going to know. No, they're not. They're not going to know unless you tell them. Right. So it's not like over the years, as I said, I've been doing this for 25 years. I've had people who were employed within DOD or other agencies that are worried about being operational so they can't file a claim. Well, that's ludicrous because VA is not going to tell DOD or any of those agencies. The only way they're going to find out is if the veteran tells them. So I understand some veterans do feel that way, but it's not a well-placed fear because it just doesn't happen.
Plus, I think Leroy Torres's case at the Supreme Court kind of ends all that fear. Because because when the Texas State Troopers fired him, he, took it to court, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled in his favor that the state had absolutely no right to fire him just because he was sick due to his exposure.
Right, and that was about accommodations too. They said they couldn't make accommodations for the severity of his condition, so they fired him. So that is a little bit different than just the average person worrying about a reprisal from their employment, right? It's completely different. Just having a disability shouldn't impact your job, and if it does, that violates the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so I understand veterans may feel that way, but it's a really bad placed thought or fear, because in the real world, it doesn't work that way unless you tell them, one, you're a disabled veteran with these disabilities, or two, you're making that an issue within your employment to not do your job, right? So it comes with a lot of different parts and pieces, but I think overall, most veterans have nothing to fear from their employer about reprisals for either registering or filing a disability claim.
Now, let me ask you this, just out of curiosity. We spent 20 years in this war. The idea of making a small footprint and getting in and getting out when you put these burn pits, or you have these burn pits that come in, and then we decided to stay a little bit longer than what the idea was. But what do you think, as far as, or what is your opinion on somebody who, they go to war, they come back, they don't have a condition yet, or, or they've seen people that have conditions and they file claims, or they got on the registry. Do you think this will help now? All the plausible deniability that we've had for the last 20 years, do you think this will help mitigate and reduce the overall suicide rates of veterans now that are being listened to, and when they file their claims for the presumption be heard? Do you think that will help the reduced suicide rate? What is your opinion on that?
Well, now we're talking about a whole different monster altogether. When we're talking about mental health and suicide prevention, there are so many different variables, so many different variables that come into that. But just from what you were stating, reducing stress and anxiety over injuries and disabilities, will that help reduce it? Absolutely. Is it going to be something that we're going to notice right away? I'm no expert statistically or how this is all going, but I do know that over the last few years that the VA is reporting the veteran suicide rate has been reduced, or is slowly reducing. Anything we can do to find a way to help reduce that is what we should be doing. But overall, do I think that this alone is going to be a big factor in that? I don't know. I think it's too early to tell. I don't think we're ever going to really know that, but I've been in the game, I guess, long enough to know that it's multifaceted. Not just one thing is going to help reduce it. There are going to be things that help reduce stress from veterans, which is really what we're trying to do, right? Make sure they're comfortable with themselves and getting the help they need and seeking that assistance. So I would love to say it will. I just don't think I'm qualified to say that.
Right. Now, let's get back to the advocating part for this law a bit. One thing that I noticed, especially here where I live, the town that I live in, they jumped on the bandwagon and supported us from the day I first asked them to start calling senators and congressmen. The Boy Scout troop here, 12, 13, 14-year-old kids. I have to say kids because Boy Scouts isn't just for boys anymore. They have girls and Girl Scouts now, or in Boy Scouts. So these kids were actually calling congressmen and senators, begging them to pass this bill. And the way I know the Boy Scout troop in this town did was because my congressman called me up one day and says, "Hey, do you know anybody in this Boy Scout troop?" I says, "Yeah, my son's in it." He says, "I've gotten so many phone calls from these boys saying they're in troop 223 in Twinsburg, saying pass the Pact Act." So when we were there at Firewatch, I'm people were telling me, yeah, people where I live are calling. Did you see on your side, Shane, where not just veterans, but and families of veterans, but just your average American joining in this fight with us when the Firewatch started?
Well, I think even before the Firewatch, during and after, DAV has what we call DAV CAN, our Commander's Action Network. You don't need to be a member. You don't need to be a veteran. You don't need to be a family member to be a part of our network. It's anybody who wants to help advocate. We have 300 and some thousand members in it. We tapped into that quite a bit during the Pact Act. So I know we were even experiencing a lot of American citizens without any real tie-in to this who were actively advocating. In one day, we were able to get 800 of our members in DAV CAN to make phone calls. 800 phone calls in 24 hours right before they voted in the Senate. So I think what we've experienced as a whole is a level of activism we aren't normally seeing with veterans issues, right? There's a lot of other political issues and hot button projects and things around the country that a lot of people will advocate for because that's something they're passionate about. I don't think we've seen that level of activism within the veterans world until the Pact Act in this last summer and everything that went down, to include with all of the different testimonies, walking the halls, confronting the 25 senators that decided to flip their vote, the Firewatch. All of these things that were done wasn't just the veterans community. It was our communities we were talking about before, whether it's local, family, friends, whoever, who are getting engaged. That's what really was a part of this too, and helped make this such a bigger push and a bigger win, is because so many people were aware and engaged. Now that it's done, we got to keep that up. And that sometimes is the hard part, because implementation is the big next key. And so then from our point of view as advocates and VSOs trying to get other pieces of legislation advanced, we already have heard, oh, well, what do you mean you're going to be pushing toxic exposures in the next Congress? We fixed all that with the Pact Act. Well, no, you didn't fix everything. You did the most historic piece of comprehensive toxic exposure legislation ever. Absolutely you did. But that didn't include everything. So here's some more issues. So we're already hearing that on the Hill, and we're not even in the next Congress yet. So I think we're going to need to find, to your point, Tim, that level of activism within our communities, American citizens, to help us be concerned about this moving forward, because getting it passed is part of the win. The other is, are they going to do it right? And are veterans still going to be getting what they're entitled to?
That's right. And now, first, I want to thank everybody who did call their congressmen and senators and help us fight for this bill, because without you, I don't think it would have passed either. I think those that did flip their votes that one time, I think they would have continued if they didn't notice the push from American citizens, not just veterans, like you said, but everybody getting involved with this. I think that's what they got involved with, and I think that's what those senators saw, was like, hey, this could kill my career if I don't switch my vote back to yes. Yeah, and I know we're running out of time here. And Kevin, you got any last questions?
No, Shane, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate your advocacy for the DAV. You're an instrumental part of when I first met you a couple years ago. Welcomed me with open arms to
Yes.
the group there, and kind of took us under your wing and stuff like that to help kind of push this through. And we've walked the halls together several times. So I appreciate what you do and what you've done for veterans and the community. So I just want to salute you and say thank you so much for your willingness to advocate on behalf of America's veterans. And it's not a red or blue issue; it's a red, white, and blue issue. And I look forward to working with you in the future. I'm coming to DC in March, so I'll look you up in March, hopefully, and we'll continue to fight for veterans and their benefits and for their families. So thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you both for having me on the show. I really, really appreciate it. And it's been great getting to know and work with you guys over the last few years. And cannot thank you both enough for being a part of the event in Erlanger and working together on the Hill over the last, seems like 5 or 6 years, but it's probably only been a year or two, right? But no, I thank you guys both for your activism, your passion, and like we were talking before, it's a commitment to something bigger than us. It's not about us. It's about the veteran community, and it's about their families. It's about maintaining that level of healthcare within the system so that Congress doesn't decide, oh, we have less veterans, let's fund it less, right? It's all of those things together. So we're only going to be successful when we are united like we have been. And I can't thank you guys enough for welcoming me in and having me on the show today. And Kevin, I don't know if you remember saying this to me at the Pact Act congressional reception, but I love you too.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was too sick to go to that. But Shane, thank you so very much for coming on. I just got one last quick question, and then we can get you on to your next podcast here. How much of a major role did you think John Stewart and John Field did with getting this bill passed?
Well, let me answer it this way first. I don't think this would have gotten done by any one group without the others.
Right.
I don't think any of the straight up activists and 360s and organizations would have got this done on their own. I don't think John Stewart would have got it done on his own. And I don't think the VSO community was going to get it done on its own. I really think everybody played such an important role in this that what John brought to the table, and especially John Stewart, was a voice and a reach outside of the veterans community that none of us really had.
Yeah.
He had a way to talk about this on a national level to where people were paying attention to him. That I know, as sad as it may sound, CNN's not asking me for interviews on a regular basis, and I'm not showing up on the Late Show. I know that's hard to believe, but it's that voice. He had a platform that none of us had, and he used it not only so well, but he's so good at advocating. So he was a huge part of this. But again, I think it was clearly a collective issue, and it wouldn't have been, I don't think we would have won without the combination of the basically 3 different kind of groups.
Mm-hmm.
You want to look at it that way, working together. I don't think it would have got done. The important thing is we don't have to worry about it now because it got done.
Well done. That's right. All right, Shane, I want to thank you so much for coming on today. It's great to talk with you again. Hopefully we can do this again here soon, and we can give some more updates about the Pact Act, and want to go ahead and let everybody know that this episode was dedicated to Private Heath Warner, who was killed by a roadside bomb in Iraq. And to everybody out there listening, thank you for listening in, and we will be posting this on YouTube here in a few minutes, and then on all major podcast platforms such as Apple, Amazon, Spotify, iHeart here in the next few hours. All right, everyone, I want to thank you for listening in, and hope you Have an awesome rest of your day.
Thanks, guys.
You're welcome.
Thanks again, Shane.